Hi everyone, this is Glenn Flaherty, and right now I want to talk to you about a game called SEAL Team Flix, and that's what I have in front of us. Now, I've taken this perspective. I've lowered the camera to try to make it feel a little bit more immersive, so you can see what's going on a little bit better in the game, whereas normally I would have an overhead, but I don't think it does it justice. So what are you trying to do in this game? So in this game, you are either playing scenarios or you are playing a campaign. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to reach certain objectives on these boards, and they are represented by these little tokens, and you don't know what's on the other side until you flip them over, okay? Like if I turn this over right here, it's a nuke. Okay, I might be trying to get a nuke. Now, in order to get those nukes and stuff like that, your seals are going to have an entry point into the board. And in this game, there are 8 different boards, and the boards are quite sturdy. And let me show you an example here. And in this board here, you can see what you're doing is you're taking these pieces, almost like Lincoln logs, and you're pushing them in. But what you end up with is a really thick, sturdy board that's 3D so that your gunshots or your flicks can bounce around. Now, like I said, there's 8 of them, and the boards are not all of the same difficulty. Some of them create bottleneck situations, like in this scenario here. Now, this is a board. In a scenario, you can pick any board you want, but in a campaign, there is a chronological order that you're picking. And in this board here, it's kind of like a mid-level campaign one. There's a little bit of a bottleneck here. I have Hannah and Marky, my 2 seals. They're coming up the center channel here, and they don't know which objective they're trying to get to. These are just hot spots on the board, okay? And, you know, these are places Intel has told you objectives might be. You might have to get a hostage. They might be booby traps. They might be a hard drive with information you need to get. You never know. You just got to go. Now, basically, you have the soldiers, they're going in, and there's a certain amount of rounds you're trying to complete. Now, over here is a little board I have, and basically all this does is this tracks what rounds you go through, okay? And a round consists of each of these seals taking 2 turns each, and that can be movement twice if you want. You can shoot, you can use an item, you know, you can do these different things. And shooting is really where the interesting part comes into play, because there's a lot of variability in what you choose for your seal to have, which is, one, it makes it fun, but also chooses what kind of disc you're going to be using as the game goes on. So before I get too far into it, let me tell you how to set up the board and then how you go through. So first you get a board, and there's nothing on the board, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to roll to put up these little blocks. Each of these blocks have a number on it. Like this one here says 1 to 3. If you roll a 1 to 3, an obstacle goes there. And what you do is you roll for each of these very particular spots, which are all labeled on the board. Like this one says all. That means no matter what you roll, a barricade has to go there. Now, that doesn't block line of sight, because line of sight in this game is essentially what determines if you can shoot at somebody, but it does present an obstacle for your bullets, okay? So you roll and you put those all down. Then there's 3 tracks in a game. There's a yellow, there's a green, and there's a red. And then you roll and you put out what are called patrols. And patrols in the game, they're going to rove around, and they're either going to rove around on their own if they don't know you're in the facility, or they are going to follow a path that leads them to the area with the most sound. And you create sound by using your gun. If you shoot a gun in this game, you create noise. You just drop that in the area, and the patrol goes there. Okay, now there's also something called sentries. Now, on my board, it was actually printed without the dots for the sentry, so I had to print out some errata and add it. But these are sentries, and they're essentially just like patrols. They're going to shoot at you, except they don't leave their certain little section of the board. Okay, patrols can move all over. Sentries will just kind of hide around corners and stuff like that. So what does a turn look like? Okay, well, what you're going to do is you're going to pick a seal, and you're going to have them come in. And when you pick a seal, you're going to get one of these little seal boards. I'm going to bring this over here for a second. And essentially what the seal does is it tells you a little flavor text. It tells you what rank. If you're playing in campaigns and you're successful, your rank gets higher and higher. And this gives you more advanced equipment. And a lot of the equipment in the game is actually quite fun. You know, whether it's makes a big difference or not, I'll say I'm halfway through the game. I don't know if it makes as big of a difference as it is cool to just pick different stuff. There's even a holographic sight that just is really cool. There's snake cams that look around corners, so you can go into rooms and just see what's going on without having to necessarily waste time going there. Lots of cool stuff. So it has your rank. It tells you how much you move. In this case, Marky can move 4 blocks at a time, 4 little squares at a time is the movement. Also has 4 life, and then you pass away. And then you get to choose. You always get a standard Colt as a weapon, but you can choose another weapon, and then you can choose some equipment to carry with you. It could be a med pack, it could be a bomb, it could be a flak jacket, and then you might even get a bonus if you have a skill. And again, you get the skills as you move through the campaigns, okay? Now, what are the differences in what you're using here in terms of choosing like your weaponry? Okay, well, if I use a Colt, when I use my Colt to try to take down an enemy and basically flicking at them, this says I can use one single small disc there, and I go boom like that, and I try to flick it at them. This is going to create 1 noise, and if I drop 1 noise on the board, it means I'm the center of attention. Okay, now if I were to use this over here in my commando, well, this will either let me shoot a single, medium, or large, so it can do more damage. I can shoot with either this one or I can shoot with this one, and what that usually means is that will create stuns and things like this. If you can't kill an enemy with a direct hit, maybe you can knock a block into them and that'll stun them and essentially rob them of a turn. Okay, so I can do that, but I can also do 3 small bursts, boom, 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 with these small discs. If I wanted to, if I knew I was going to hit my enemies, but I needed to get it into a tight area. Okay, and this one, however, because it's more powerful, also causes more noise. How does that come into play? Well, if this area has 1 noise, and let's say I was attacking over here and this had 2 noise, the patrols would actually come this way, and that might create a diversion, so I can go over here and maybe perhaps get a hidden objective. And let's see what this one was going to be had I gone there. Oh, it would have been an ambush. This says it's a tango patrol, and so that means that I would have had an enemy pop up in my room and counter fire. Okay, and that's basically what this is. Also, as you move up, you get some type of special ability. The game also has sniper rifles, which is really cool because the sniper rifle has its own board. Let me show you that for a second. I don't want to give away all the secrets because I kind of want you to discover it on your own. But let's say you are a sniper rifle. You're going to flick your disc, and you want to take out the bad guy by getting it on that red dot. You do not want to flick it here because there goes your hostage. That is no good. Okay, so that's one of the things. That's actually kind of cool and kind of, stressful. And in a way, it actually makes the flicking pretty darn thematic. We also have something here, the bomb defusal, where you have to flick your disc and you have to try to disarm the bomb. And then you also have an electronic bypass. This is probably the easiest thing on the board. It's used in the first scenario of the game too, where there's a very specific combination, and the way you defeat this is by flicking from here and trying to knock everything out of the red square, before you run out of discs. So that's pretty easy, but there's these little engaging things like that I really consider to be quite thematic when you're playing it. Now, I will tell you, when you're setting up the boards, let me give you a test scenario before I get too far down in detail. So let's say Hannah was going to take her 2 turns in the game. My first action is she's going to walk. She's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have it right here. And then I'm going to flick my disc, and let's just go boom like that. And if I make contact, that patrol is out of the game. Okay. And that might seem like it's pretty easy to do because the board's pretty tight, and it is. But what happens is after everyone does their turns, you roll the die again, and that might bring out extra patrols. So, they're kind of dumb, they're kind of clumsy, but they keep running in just like, so any bad person movie like Indiana Jones, they just keep running in or something like that. If you get one of these bigger ones here, you can go boom like that and knock a block into a person. That would stun them. The enemy actually attacks on their turn using this die. And this will either, like I said, cause a stun on you. They'll attack you for 1, they'll attack you for 2, or they might not do any damage like that. Okay, so you do fire, they return fire, and you don't necessarily want to spend all your time battling because you do have to make it to your objectives, and time is running out. Now, that's the thrust of how the game plays. I can tell you that the first few scenarios in the game when you're doing the campaign mode, they're pretty darn easy, and I think that's to get your feet wet. The game gives you different levels of complexity, and the complexity has to do with how many baddies are on the board and how many objectives you have to complete. This one, I just put all the objectives out, so you can see how full the board would be if you were to attack everything involved. But as you move on through the campaign, it definitely increases in difficulty, and you start seeing how it would be fun to use some of the other tools in the game that you get the chance to use with a higher rank. First, let me just talk about the fun factor and the immersiveness of it. So, I can see this game being really fun for 10-year-olds and stuff like this. In a lot of ways, this game is a lot like playing toy soldier. You got your soldiers out, they're blowing stuff up, you're throwing it around, you're literally shooting at each other. It's a really cool game. Even I enjoyed it. The grizzled vets, you have fun moments in it too, where you're moving around the board, Hannah is over here, you're trying to shoot, and you're like, there's no way I can mess this up, and then I totally just whiffed on that shot. So that actually leads to a lot of little fun moments in the game. The build quality in the game, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I got to tell you, these boards are so thick. And let me show you some of the other ones too. There are a lot of different boards in here. They're thick, they're sturdy. And the great thing about it is that even after you build these boards and they have their height, they all fit into the box without disassembly, which I'm really, really thankful about. The art style in the game is twofold, okay? So I appreciate the art style that is in the game. Like, if we were to look at Hannah, I dig the art, but I got to tell you, look at the patrol. It kind of looks like, Cheech and Chong or something like that. But I wish there was more variety in it. The boards, I know they're trying to keep it kind of grimy and real, but they're a little downtrodden. I wish there was a little bit more pop to it. The art on the pieces, it's all the same. Like, look at all the sentries. There's no difference in the sentries. They are all the same image. Even if you turn it the other way, they're still facing the same direction. So you need a little bit more variety in there for me. So overall, I probably give the art 6 out of 10. The instructions in the game, my goodness, the instructions are amazing and super clear. There's actually 2 booklets that come with this, that 1 explain how to play it, and 2 show you how to do all the layouts and all the scenarios. So like I was saying a second ago, here's the quick reference, and I already made a note that got swiped because my cat walked on the book. But it looks like a lot of information, but it really is not, and it's quite logical. This whole thing here is the rules of the game, and is not nearly as in-depth as you might think. It really is just a matter that it is a well-explained, well-numbered rule book that makes it so incredibly easy to play. And then this other book, they actually tell you how to set up a game. So interestingly here, I was telling you earlier that there are different levels to the game. Well, for example, if we had this board here, this is like the first board in the game. There's 3 different levels you can play as a rookie, a veteran, and an operator. As you go up in difficulty, the amount of rounds you get, the amount of objectives, primary and secondary and other, are involved in the game. And then depending on player count, 1 to 2 or 3 to 4, it tells you how many enemies are going to come out on the board. And so it can get tougher on you. And that's another thing about this, like when we're talking about the hardness of the game. Well, quality of decision, hardness of the game, where does it come from? Well, the quality of decision of the game really comes from, 1, when you start the game, going for whatever upgrades and what you think would complement your weapon. Like if I was going to get a high caliber weapon, I might want to put a suppressor on it. If I'm going into a really hard board, I might want to pack medical kits, okay, which will give me 1 life back. Okay, so you're choosing there. But once you're in the game, you're kind of in the midst of it and you're seeing how the game unfolds. So your decisions are tactical from, turn to turn to turn to see the lay of the land. Your health really is dependent on these rolls. And it's not only these rolls, but the rolls that bring out troops. You roll here, you might get hit once or twice. Maybe you could survive it. You're like, I can totally, make it through this game. It's going to be fine. But then after everyone takes their turn, you have to roll to see more troops come out. And the troops have to match a number of an entry point. Like this one says number 2. If you roll a number 2, a troop will come out here and then you place them on the board. But if you don't roll a 2, no troop will come out here. Another thing that'll kind of change this up is not all the boards are going to be as hard as this necessarily. Like when you move on through the campaign, goals, these objectives here are laid out and they're all over. But early on, you might get it where all of your objectives, because you have ones you really need, and then you kind of have red herrings and some enemies. Well, depending on how you roll for the setup of the board, and if you remember, I told you have to roll, like in this case, you have to roll a 2 to 5. If you roll a 2 to 5, the block will go there. I've had some games where I swear there is no obstacles on the board at all. And it became really easy to just attack all my enemies. Like I would take a disc, go boom, and see you. And sometimes it would bounce around, take everybody out. Also, my objectives would be clustered. So I kind of came in, I grabbed them, and I all left, and it wasn't hard at all. There's even one campaign in the game where the objective was to either kill the mastermind or it was to just assassinate the mastermind. Okay. If you're somebody that wants to control everything, this is probably not the game for you. One, you can't control the setup. You can't control what the enemies are going to do. You also can't necessarily control where your flicking is going to land, but that's kind of like a video game brought to life. You're not sure what's going to come or how they're going to come through the door necessarily. What you can control in the game is how you prepare for the scenario using your intel, and that means what the layout of the board is going to be. You try your best to flick, you decide where you're going to go, you work in unity with your co-players. Now, I should also say a great thing about this game is you can play from 1 up. Because it's cooperative, you can play as multiple soldiers or just you. And it's a really fantastic game for that reason. In fact, I got to tell you, overall, I do want it in my collection. It's the kind of game that I think is going to be great on a game night for a change of pace. And I'm actually interested to see how the different scenarios unfold. Some of your games are going to be blitz hard. Some of them might be totally easy. And some of the games become easier with more seals on the board. Again, like I said, I'm about halfway through the game. So, take my opinion with a grain of salt there. I will definitely report back once I get through the whole thing. Okay, and that is SEAL Team Flix. Hope you enjoy it, everyone. Take care.